Stop scrolling for a second because what I'm about to say is going to make a lot of men uncomfortable. But it's the truth. If you think you understand women, think again. Most men are walking around clueless, acting like they've got it all figured out, when in reality, they're missing something that could completely change the way they interact with women. And not in a manipulative way, but in a way that actually makes them more confident, more aware, and yes, more successful in relationships. Here's the thing. Society has spent decades feeding men one message. Treat women equally, be respectful, and everything will fall into place. Don't get me wrong, respect is key. But here's the controversial part. Respect alone doesn't mean you understand human behaviour, attraction, or the subtle dynamics that govern how women think and react. Most men go through life assuming women are some unbreakable, mysterious force. And because of that, they constantly get frustrated, ignored, or friend-zoned. And the truth, there are clear patterns, weaknesses, if you will, that every man who wants to understand women should know. Before you get defensive, hear me out. I'm not saying women are weak in a negative or derogatory sense. What I'm saying is that every human being, male or female, has vulnerabilities, tendencies, and blind spots. Understanding these doesn't make you a predator. It makes you intelligent. It makes you aware. It makes you someone who can navigate social dynamics without guessing, without anxiety, without wasting time. And let's face it, most men are wasting a lot of time. Now, here's another hard truth. Most men aren't awake to these realities. They think that sending random texts, buying gifts, or acting overly agreeable is enough to win a woman over. That's the equivalent of bringing a butter knife to a sword fight. You're completely unprepared. Women are humans. They have emotions, instincts, and, yes, certain patterns of behaviour that repeat themselves. If you want to stand out, if you want to be the man who can enter a room and command attention naturally, ignoring these patterns is like shooting yourself in the foot. Let's be honest for a second. Society conditions men to suppress their understanding of these dynamics because it's considered unseemly or manipulative to talk about them. That's a lie. Knowledge is not manipulation. It's awareness. Think of it like learning to read body language or social cues. If you can spot signals, understand reactions, and communicate effectively, you're not being deceitful. You're being human. And the fact is, most men never get this education. They walk into situations blind, frustrated, and confused. Here's another controversial point that most men won't admit. Women actually respond to confidence, intelligence, and awareness more than any superficial charm. Yet most men try to fake it or copy what they see online, instead of truly understanding what makes women tick. They think the solution is in lines, routines, or tricks. But the truth is far deeper. There's a psychology here. And while women aren't predictable in every single situation, there are undeniable tendencies that every man should know if he wants to navigate relationships successfully. And let me make this crystal clear. This isn't about controlling anyone. It's about self-improvement and understanding human nature. If you're the kind of man who gets frustrated when women act hot and cold or ignores your feelings, the problem isn't always them. It's you being unaware of the patterns that exist naturally. By understanding these patterns, you're not being manipulative. You're being proactive. You're learning, growing, and evolving. So, why is this video controversial? Because most men are afraid of talking about it. They've been told that noticing weaknesses or tendencies is somehow disrespectful or offensive. That's nonsense. Knowing how to read a room, understand emotional signals, and communicate effectively is not a crime. In fact, it's essential if you want to succeed in your relationships and avoid constant frustration. By the end of this video, you're going to understand the 7 key weaknesses in female behavior that most men overlook. These are not secrets designed to trick anyone. They are insights that once you know them will completely change your perspective. You'll start seeing patterns you've ignored, moments you've missed, and opportunities for connection you didn't even realize existed. And here's the kicker. This knowledge gives you power. Not the kind of power that makes people fear you, but the kind of power that makes interactions smoother, more confident, and far more effective. You'll start noticing small signals, body language cues, and emotional tendencies that reveal more than words ever could. You'll stop guessing and start understanding. If you think you already know everything about women, buckle up because this video is going to challenge your assumptions. It's going to make you rethink your approach, question your behaviors, and maybe even admit some uncomfortable truths about yourself. But here's the promise. If you pay attention, this will change the way you interact with women forever. By the end, you'll have a practical understanding of female tendencies that most men never even notice. You'll be more confident, more aware, and yes, more attractive. Not because you're trying to game anyone, but because you finally understand the dynamics that govern attraction, communication, and emotional connection. So, stick with me, keep an open mind, and get ready to wake up to realities that most men ignore. The 7 weaknesses we're about to discuss aren't just helpful, they're game-changing. 1. Emotional reactivity. Why women can overreact and how to handle it. One of the first things every man should understand about women is how emotional their responses can be. And I don't mean this in a judgmental way, I mean it as a reality. Women are wired to feel and express emotions in ways that are sometimes more intense than men. This is not a weakness to mock. It's a part of human nature, but it's a blind spot that most men fail to recognize, and it ends up causing unnecessary tension in relationships. Here's the truth. Men are often taught to stay logical, suppress their feelings, or just deal with it, while women are encouraged to express and process emotions openly. That difference can create confusion. You might say something innocent or straightforward only for her to react in a way you didn't expect. And if you're unaware of this dynamic, your first instinct might be to get defensive, argue, or shut down. But that's the wrong approach. Understanding emotional reactivity gives you the upper hand because it allows you to respond with awareness instead of frustration. Think about a common scenario. You're texting a woman and you notice her tone suddenly changes. Maybe she replies with short, sharp messages, or she seems distant. Your mind instantly jumps to conclusions. Did I do something wrong? Why is she upset? Most men panic here. They overthink, apologize unnecessarily, or try to fix something that isn't broken. But the reality is her emotional reaction might not even be directly about you. She could be tired, stressed, or reacting to something completely unrelated. But because women tend to process emotions more openly, it comes out in ways that can feel personal to you. Here's what separates men who struggle from men who succeed. The ability to recognize emotional reactions without overreacting themselves. When you notice a shift, your response matters more than the cause. If you panic or respond emotionally yourself, the situation escalates. If you stay calm, attentive, and present, you gain respect and trust naturally. You don't have to solve everything or offer a solution immediately. Just being aware and understanding that emotions aren't always rational can completely change the interaction. For example, imagine you and a woman are making plans for the weekend. She suddenly becomes short in her messages and says she's not sure if she can make it. Most men take this personally, thinking she's losing interest or upset with them. The instinct is to text back aggressively, ask 100 questions, or over-explain yourself. Instead, a man who understands emotional dynamics might respond with something like, "Got it. Let me know what works for you," keeping it calm and unpressured. By not reacting emotionally, you give her space to process her feelings, and she's more likely to open up naturally when she's ready. Another aspect to understand is that emotional intensity can sometimes mask vulnerability. When a woman reacts strongly, it may not be aggression. It might be a need for attention, support, or reassurance. Recognizing this allows a man to respond with empathy, not defensiveness. This is where awareness becomes your advantage. Instead of feeling attacked, you start seeing the underlying emotion, and your response becomes strategic, calm, patient, and confident. Now, let's get one thing clear. This doesn't mean you should tolerate behavior that's disrespectful or manipulative. Emotional reactivity is about feelings, not excuses for mistreatment. It's about recognizing patterns and responding in a way that builds connection rather than creating conflict. Many men make the mistake of thinking they need to fight fire with fire when a woman overreacts. The result? Arguments, tension, and unnecessary drama. The men who master this understand that strength is calmness and consistency, not escalation. This principle applies in real life too. Think of a time when you saw a friend or colleague lose their cool. You probably noticed that the person who stayed calm and steady ended up respected more than the one who reacted in kind. The same principle works in relationships. Women respect men who remain composed in the face of heightened emotions. They may not say it openly, but this calm presence creates trust and makes you someone they feel safe with. In short, the first female weakness every man should know is emotional reactivity. Not as a flaw, but as a pattern. Women are more likely to express emotions openly, sometimes intensely, and this can feel overwhelming if you're unprepared. Men who understand this don't react impulsively. They observe, respond calmly, and create an environment where emotional intensity doesn't lead to conflict. Remember, noticing this pattern gives you clarity. You start to see situations for what they really are, instead of projecting your own fears or insecurities onto them. You don't need to control anyone, change anyone, or fix everything. Awareness is your tool, and calm confidence is your strength. Once you grasp this, you'll notice a shift not only in how women interact with you, but in how you approach every relationship, personal or professional. Understanding emotional reactivity isn't about manipulation. It's about mastery. Mastery of yourself, your reactions, and your environment. The men who fail to recognize this spend countless hours overthinking, apologizing unnecessarily, and feeling frustrated. The men who understand it move through life with clarity, confidence, and a natural ability to connect with women on a deeper level. 2. Overthinking. How women analyze everything and what it means for you. If there's one thing that can make men feel like they're constantly walking on eggshells, it's the fact that women tend to overthink situations. And let's be honest, this is not an attack or an insult. It's a reality that most men ignore, and it ends up creating unnecessary confusion and frustration. Think about it. Have you ever said something simple like, "I'll call you later," and suddenly felt like the conversation shifted? Or maybe you noticed her distant tone and immediately wondered if you did something wrong. Chances are she isn't trying to make your life difficult. She's just processing everything. Your words, your actions, even the tone you used in running them through her own internal analysis. Overthinking is part of human nature. But women often take it to a different level because of the way they are wired to notice details, remember past conversations, and anticipate outcomes. This means they are constantly evaluating not just what you say, but what you don't say, how you said it, and even what it might imply about your intentions. For men who are unaware of this tendency, it can feel like every interaction comes with a hidden agenda or invisible rules that you have to figure out. This is where many men make mistakes. They assume everything is straightforward and linear, that one sentence has one clear meaning, and that actions speak for themselves. But in reality, women often layer multiple interpretations over even the simplest interactions. They think about how your words fit into the bigger picture of the relationship, what it might suggest about your character, or how it reflects on their own feelings. A casual remark can suddenly feel like a test, a signal, or even a red flag, all because their mind is analysing far more than meets the eye. The tricky part is that this overthinking is rarely communicated directly. You might feel confused, wondering why she suddenly seems distant, upset, or distracted. Men often respond by either trying to over-explain themselves, apologising for things that aren't mistakes, or withdrawing out of frustration. None of these responses actually address the root of the issue. The key is to understand that her thought process is naturally analytical and reflective, not necessarily critical or negative. Most men can relate to feeling this tension. You say something in the moment, and later it's discussed in ways you didn't expect. You find yourself replaying conversations in your head, wondering if you should have phrased something differently or stressing about a text that seems harmless. That's exactly how women experience their interactions, except they do it faster, more frequently, and often in ways that anticipate potential outcomes. Overthinking also connects to how women process emotions. When they are analysing a situation deeply, it's not because they want to create drama. It's because they want understanding, clarity, or reassurance. And even if you're not aware of it, your actions and words are constantly being filtered through this lens. That's why small gestures, consistency, and clear communication matter more than many men realise. You can't control how someone thinks, but being aware that overanalysis exists can help you approach interactions with patience and calm. It's important to note that overthinking is not about manipulation. Women aren't scheming every moment. They are simply paying attention to details that men might overlook. They care about how actions match words, whether promises are consistent, and if intentions are clear. A man who recognises this can avoid unnecessary misunderstandings and move through interactions more confidently. Another relatable aspect is that overthinking often makes women test boundaries or seek reassurance indirectly. You might notice her asking questions repeatedly or seeking confirmation on small matters. It's not a trap. It's a reflection of how deeply she processes experiences. Men who get frustrated by this often miss the point. The process isn't personal, it's internal, and it's a way of seeking connection and understanding. For men, awareness of this tendency changes everything. You start noticing patterns you didn't see before, realize why certain interactions feel more complicated than they should, and stop taking everything personally. You become someone who can communicate clearly, stay calm under scrutiny, and provide consistency without getting frustrated. That in turn earns respect, trust, and naturally increases your influence in interactions. In the end, the second female tendency every man should understand is overthinking. Women process more, analyse deeper, and consider multiple angles in almost every interaction. It can feel overwhelming if you're not prepared, but for men who recognise it, it becomes an advantage. You no longer react impulsively. You understand the patterns, and you navigate conversations with clarity, patience, and confidence. Understanding overthinking isn't about changing anyone or controlling their thoughts. It's about seeing reality clearly, responding appropriately, and creating a connection that feels natural and effortless. Once you grasp this, the confusion and frustration that most men feel in relationships start to fade, leaving room for real understanding, respect, and influence. 3. Seeking validation. Why women crave reassurance and what men often miss. Here's a truth that most men refuse to admit. Women, like everyone else, seek validation. They want to feel seen, appreciated, and understood. But so many men completely overlook this because they think it's weak or unnecessary to notice. The problem isn't that women crave reassurance, it's that men are often asleep to it, ignoring cues, and then wondering why their relationships feel flat, distant, or frustrating. Let's get real for a moment. Men are conditioned to believe that independence equals strength. And because of that, they often dismiss emotional needs, both theirs and theirs, in women. They think that if they aren't constantly doing something, they're failing. And when a woman seeks reassurance, these men often see it as nagging, clinginess, or even manipulation. That's not just wrong, it's missing the point entirely. Women expressing the need for recognition isn't a weakness. It's human nature. And ignoring it, that's a recipe for frustration for both sides. Here's where the criticism comes in. So many men fail to wake up to the reality of relationships. They think showing care, listening attentively, or providing reassurance makes them less masculine. That couldn't be further from the truth. A man who understands this doesn't waste energy on ego. He sees the dynamic clearly. He knows that responding thoughtfully and consistently doesn't diminish him. It elevates him. And the truth is, men who refuse to acknowledge this tend to sabotage themselves. They miss signals, misread situations, and wonder why women seem distant or harder to connect with. Think about it in simple terms. Have you ever noticed her subtly hinting for appreciation after you compliment her once? Or maybe she's asking about your plans or your feelings because she wants to feel included. Most men brush it off as unnecessary or overdramatic. They don't realize that women naturally seek reinforcement of connection. It's not about control or manipulation. It's about emotional alignment. When women feel acknowledged and understood, interactions flow smoothly, tension decreases, and mutual trust grows. The mistake men make is assuming that emotional needs are a sign of weakness, or worse, that they're a personal burden. This kind of thinking is outdated and self-sabotaging. Women are human beings with feelings, and relationships are about connection, not conquest. When men ignore these signals, they're effectively checking out of the emotional equation, even if they're present physically. And if you're honest with yourself, you've probably seen this pattern in your own life. You miss cues, she distances herself, and suddenly you're left confused and frustrated. Here's the wake-up call. If you want to succeed with women, if you want relationships that aren't stressful or one-sided, you need to start paying attention. You need to notice when she's seeking reassurance, when she's craving recognition, and when she wants to feel understood. It doesn't require overanalyzing or trying to perform for her. It's about awareness, consistency, and presence. That's what separates men who succeed from men who stumble blindly. And let's be honest, this isn't just about women. Men who fail to notice these patterns are also failing themselves. They're walking around frustrated, confused, and often feeling unfulfilled because they don't understand how natural human connection works. Relationships aren't games, and women aren't puzzles. They're reflections of emotional dynamics. Recognizing the need for validation is part of understanding the bigger picture, communication, empathy, and mutual respect. Many men can relate to the frustration that comes from not being understood or thinking a situation is simple when it's actually layered. Women process more, feel more, and express more, but men often refuse to see it. That refusal creates tension, misunderstandings, and unnecessary drama. By waking up to this reality, men can stop reacting out of ego or impatience and start responding in ways that build trust, respect, and genuine connection. Here's the bottom line. The third female tendency every man should recognize is the need for validation. Ignoring it is a mistake. Reacting negatively to it is a mistake. And assuming its weakness is a mistake. A man who understands this isn't being controlled. He's being aware. He's conscious of how human dynamics work and uses that awareness to navigate interactions confidently. So, men, it's time to wake up. Stop pretending that emotional alignment isn't important. Stop thinking that noticing her needs somehow diminishes your masculinity. Pay attention, respond thoughtfully, and understand that seeking reassurance isn't a flaw. It's part of how relationships work. Once you grasp this, you'll notice a massive shift in how women respond, how interactions feel, and how confident and effective you can be in connecting with them. Now, before we wrap this up, let me drop a truth that most men won't admit out loud. Brace yourself, because this is going to ruffle some feathers, but it's reality, and ignoring it is costing men more than they realize. Here it is. Most men are completely asleep when it comes to understanding women, and it's sabotaging their lives in ways they don't even see. I'm not saying this to insult anyone. I'm saying it because it's a wake-up call. You see, the majority of men operate under myths and assumptions. If I'm nice, she'll like me. Or I just need to be myself. Or worse, if she's upset, it's her problem. These ideas sound good on the surface, but in practice, they leave men frustrated, confused, and often stuck in relationships that never satisfy them. They don't realize that understanding women isn't about control or manipulation. It's about awareness. And until you wake up to the patterns, tendencies, and realities of human behavior, you're operating blind. Here's the controversial part. The world doesn't owe you understanding. Women aren't obligated to explain their every emotion, respond to your text the way you expect, or behave in ways that make sense to your ego. And yet, most men spend years, sometimes decades, expecting exactly that while putting in little effort to understand the dynamics that actually matter. That's the uncomfortable truth. And yes, it's hard to hear, but it's a reality that separates men who succeed in relationships from men who constantly fail. Think about it. How many times have you been frustrated thinking she was being difficult, only to realize later that you misread the situation completely? How many men have felt rejected, ignored, or confused when the problem wasn't her? It was their lack of awareness, their impatience, or their inability to see patterns clearly. The answer is obvious to anyone who is honest with themselves. Most men are asleep, and until they wake up, the cycle repeats endlessly. But here's the good news. The moment you choose to wake up, everything changes. You start noticing patterns that others miss. You understand reactions, moods, and signals before they become conflicts. You stop overreacting, stop panicking, and stop making assumptions. You become the kind of man who navigates relationships with clarity, confidence, and respect. Not because you're trying to control anyone, but because you finally understand the reality of human behavior. And here's where I want to create a real connection with you. I want you to share your experiences. Drop a comment below about times you've been frustrated, confused, or blown away by a woman's behavior. Moments where you didn't understand why she reacted the way she did. Tell me what patterns you've noticed, and I promise I will read them, engage with them, and respond. I want to hear your perspective, your struggles, and your wins. Because this isn't just a lecture, it's a conversation. And conversations change lives when people are willing to be honest with themselves. Let me also challenge you further. Don't settle for mediocrity. Don't tell yourself that relationships are too complicated or that women are too difficult to understand. That's a trap. That's the mindset of men who refuse to wake up. If you really want results, if you want respect, confidence, and connection, you have to do the hard work. Observing, understanding, and applying these insights in your life consistently. The men who succeed aren't necessarily the most charming, the richest, or the best looking. They're the ones who understand patterns and respond intelligently. That's the controversial truth most people won't admit out loud. So, here's the boldest statement I'm going to make right now. If you're frustrated with women, it's not them, it's you. That's it. No excuses, no blaming. Your lack of awareness, your impatience, your assumptions, and your ego are the real obstacles. And until you face that reality, nothing will change. Most men will hate hearing this, but it's the truth. The sooner you accept it, the sooner you can grow, learn, and finally experience relationships that are fulfilling instead of exhausting. And here's my final point. This is your chance to start waking up. Engage with this content. Comment on your experiences. Share your insights, frustrations, and realizations. I will read your words. I will respond. I will connect with you. Because this isn't about me teaching you. It's about us learning together, growing together, and helping each other navigate the realities of human behavior. The choice is yours. You can ignore this message like most men do. Continue repeating the same mistakes and stay frustrated, confused, and disconnected. Or you can wake up, pay attention, and start understanding the dynamics that govern attraction, communication, and connection. The decision is yours. But let me be clear. The clock is ticking, and every day you stay asleep is a day wasted. Wake up. Pay attention. Comment below. Let's start the conversation, and let's grow